Good morning. This is Dr. Bill White, and I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about TADS, their use, and also about their history. Uh, People have been screwing things into different parts of the body for years, and years ago, uh, we couldn't bond anything to the cuspid teeth, or if they were impacted, you were trying to pull them out, or any other teeth. We couldn't bond to them, and you definitely didn't want to tie a wire around the neck of a tooth. Uh, that was done for a while, but it damaged the tooth and stuff. Wrapping a wire around them like that and pulling up there was bad, uh, and the tooth wouldn't go where you wanted to. That's like if you had a boat out on the water out here and you tied a rope to the middle of it and tried to drag it somewhere, well, it would go zigzag back like this. So you put the thing you're going to pull it in as close to the tip of it as you possibly can. And so we had little eyelets of the thing. There was something. This is much larger than it was. It was very small and had an opening in it, and just a shaft down here, and it was threaded. And when you ordered them, they sent you a little drill with that, with a drill to hole just slightly smaller than their threads on this, and this had threads on it, and we would uncover the cuspid and then drill a hole in the cuspid crown if we could get as close as we possibly could, just a small hole through the into the crown, and then you would take this little screw that was on this had an eyelet on it. That's not correct there, and we would screw it down into the tooth, and you'd have a little deal like that on the tooth, and you could tie onto that and pull the tooth in, and it'd pull like a tied to the front of a boat. Uh, Now this was difficult to do, and I remember my old surgeon a lot of times. He There were two of them, and would send them over there for them to put these little eyelets, we call them, in, and that was nothing but a tad. It was just drilled into the tooth, and you're going to take it out, and a little drill, a little bit there, and thing you could drill this hole in there and screw that down. And then when you got the tooth out, you unscrewed it if you could and filled the hole. Well, I broke one off one time, and I just drilled down in there and got it where it wouldn't color, and then put some composite over the top of it, and you couldn't see it. Just a slight dark spot on the tooth right there. So that was years ago, and that was the first thing they used to wrap wire around the tooth, and that really messed up the attachment of the tooth. And then the next thing we started using these TADS to pull in the impacted cuspids. I don't think I had any cameras back then. I don't have any cases in uh, my impacted cuspids. I've got a whole string of them to show you. But this is what it was, and that was the first. To me, that was the first TADS, and so TADS are an old item. I'm gonna go now and show you some things in the bone structure where you would excuse me, the cortical bone. You see how thick it is in here, and if you look at the edge of it down here in your along on the bottom of the jaw. It looks like it's about 2 millimeters thick. Up here it would be pretty thick in between the teeth, but then you go in between the teeth and there's cancellous bone, and you don't want to expect any uh, good hold on anything if you get into cancellous bone, but you have to go through cortical bone. And so the use of these TADS is just unlimited. It just depends on uh, what you can dream up to uh, do with them. Like if I had this tooth extracted right here and I wanted this one to move over in the hole, I would put a TAD in here and this would slide this way and this would stay still. And if I wanted to go the other way, you'd put the TAD back here and then pull on this and pull it back. So it's pretty simple. Let me erase some of that now. And now it is possible to drill in and put a TAD up here in cortical bone. You see, every time I touch that thing comes on, you could put the TAD up in this area, and then you'd have an arch wire over these teeth coming along here, and you would come down and put some spring or whatever tension where you could, and the arch wire would kind of bow like this, so you'd pick these teeth up much more than that. So you might have to come back and put a TAD in this end and maybe some up in other areas, and you can actually pick the teeth up. Now once the teeth come up to a point, then you're like picking yourself up by your bootstraps. But anyway, you can use TADS to elevate the arch like that, and that's much better than going into surgery. I remember the first time I went in somebody, we cut right across here, somewhere right up in there, and had the maxilla just laid out on the tongue, and you shorten this area with bone, just trip it out, clip the bone structure out, put the maxilla back in there, and you've got little plates and you tie it on. So this looks tedious, putting a lot of TADS in there and doing that, but it's a lot easier than going in and cutting this, taking the maxilla down. In other words, you're wanting to shorten this part of the face right in here. And it works. People lower their whole vertical dimension in that way. Now there's another point while we're at this point. You see how thin the tooth structure, the bone structure is on these anterior teeth. Now if you're moving a group of teeth forward, like you wanted to open a space in here somewhere and put another bicuspid in on somebody, you have to run interference for this. You push the tissue out away from it so that there is a nice thick vascular supply out here in front of the tooth and develop the bone. If you put something, push the tooth into tight gingival tissue, you would tend to strip the bone off of the tooth. In other words, you'd push the tooth through the bone. But if you put a lip bumper out in here and run back in here, and we've got some cases showing that, then you had a soft vascular bed that bone could develop in as you moved it away. Now, expanding in this area, there's no pressure on it, so you can just expand this all you want to on any body at any age. As far as I'm concerned, you can take somebody my age, and if you want to expand their palate, you could push it in there and push it sideways like this. There's no tight bone structure on it, and you could move this tight muscle pressure against it, and that would come out easily and expand it. And so we're sticking a little extra stuff in here with this. Now, mostly what you use, like if you want to advance this whole maxilla in this direction, you can go up in the palate and put 2 or 3 pads and TADS, and then have springs on them that push the teeth forward, and the palate would stay pretty much there, and you push the teeth in a forward direction that way. There are a lot of other ways of, say, if you're doing a TMJ job and you've got the mandible too far back, and it's pushing in that retrodiscal tissue, and you want the jaw to come further out in here, then you move the maxilla out various ways, so this is just showing some different ways. I should have named it a little different, but anyway, TADS are excellent for closing space on people, and you want to keep the teeth up here, so you put the TAD here, and now you maybe move a wisdom tooth up and fill in a gap or something like that, so you can put the TADs to do that. So the use of them is just endless, and I think they're a very good thing that you haven't done where you should get into it. Now, the little screws, I would call them, are too darn high. They ought to be a lot cheaper than that, and people ought to use a lot more than they do. So I'm hoping you get something out of this. You see the cancellous bone. If you got thin bone structure here, you won't get a whole lot of help stabilizing your screw going into the cancellous bone. It's quite a bit softer, so you need to go into cortical bone. And if you're pulling these teeth back and you've got this tooth out, you put this TAD kind of on the side of the tooth and come up here and then bond to the head of the tooth, bond the tooth to the TAD, and that keeps the tooth from moving, and the TAD can be out here in cortical bone. You don't have to get straight between the teeth to do it. You can do it from the side of the tooth. Well, I hope you get something out of this, and I'll say goodbye for the time being, and we'll come up with some other interesting things about moving teeth. And I'll close down here and thank you for coming. I think I'll close down.